They packed quickly, coats, water bottles, a packet of oatcakes. The lane that had brought them here stretched uphill into the fog, vanishing around a bend. They walked. The road was worse than they remembered. Mud sucked to their boots. Brambles clutched their coats. The fog was thicker higher up, a shifting wall that seemed to lean closer with every step. After an hour, they reached a crossroads. None of them remembered it from the bus. One track led left, down into another dip of moorland. The other veered right, vanishing into mist. Mark scratched his head. I don't like this. We should have hit the main road by now. There was no crossroads, Reuben said flatly. Emily's breath trembled. We're lost. We shouldn't be lost. It's just one road. The mist thickened around them, pressing close. Reuben felt it in his lungs, damp and heavy, as though the valley itself didn't want them to leave. A sound drifted faintly through the fog. Thump. They froze. It came again. Thump. Slow. Measured. The wheel. Emily whispered. But the mill was far behind them. Wasn't it? Mark forced a laugh, though his face was pale. Sound travels weird in the fog. That's all. But Reuben knew. The sound wasn't carrying to them. It was with them. Somewhere unseen in the mist. Something was moving in rhythm. He turned back the way they came. We need to go. Now. No one argued. They returned to the cottage shaken, mud-caked, and silent. The fog seemed thicker than ever, the valley shrinking tighter around them. Mark swore under his breath. It doesn't make sense. Roads don't just change. Emily sat on the hearth, hugging herself. Maybe we didn't notice the crossroads on the bus. Maybe we got turned around. Reuben shook his head. We didn't. Something doesn't want us to leave. They stared at him. He didn't flinch. That night, the knock returned. Once, then silence. They sat rigid, every nerve raw, waiting for more. But no second knock came. Instead, scraping. Like nails across the door. Slow, probing, testing the wood. Emily whimpered into her blanket. Mark swore softly. Reuben stood, fists clenched, but didn't move closer this time. The scraping went on for nearly an hour. Then silence fell again, deeper than before. Sleep came in fragments. Reuben dreamed of water, black and endless, of something vast moving beneath the surface. He dreamed of faces pressed against the glass of the mill's windows, pale mouths opening and closing in silence. He woke up gasping, sweat cold on his skin. The fire had died again. The cottage was utterly still. Then he heard it, breathing. Not Mark's snores, not Emily's soft sighs. A third breath, low, vet, just behind the door. Reuben clamped his hand over his mouth, every muscle locked. The breathing continued, slow and steady. Then footsteps, pacing, back and forth, across the threshold, as if someone waited. He didn't sleep again. When dawn finally arrived, he was already sitting at the table, staring at the door. His face was pale, his eyes ring-dark. Mark groaned awake, rubbing his head. Christ, you look like death. Reuben's voice was flat. Something was out there last night. Emily stirred, her face drawn. The scraping, the breathing, Reuben said. The footsteps. Mark froze, his smirk faltering. You're serious? Reuben didn't answer. Emily wrapped her blanket tighter. We have to leave. We have to. Mark nodded slowly. For once, he didn't argue. They packed by noon. Only essentials, food, coats, the map. The fog clung thick, but they were desperate now, ready to walk until their legs gave out. They reached the lane again. The crossroads. It was gone. The road stretched ahead, unbroken, just as they remembered from the bus. Mark laughed shakily. See? We just got turned around yesterday. But the laugh didn't last, because faintly, carried through the mist. Thump, thump, closer now. They didn't speak. They turned and fled back toward the cottage, the sound following, always just behind. That night, there was no knock. No scrapping, no breathing, only silence. And somehow, that was worse, because silence meant waiting. Chapter 4, Inside the Mill. The silence gnawed at them. All day it lingered, heavy as the fog, pressing against their ears until the faintest sounds, the hiss of rain against the windows, the crack of settling wood, made them flinch. By evening, Mark couldn't stand it anymore. He stood by the hearth, pacing in tight circles. This is stupid. We're letting an empty building drive us insane. It's not empty, Reuben said flatly. Mark ignored him. If we don't face it, we'll sit here every night waiting for knocks and scrapes until we lose our minds. We go tonight. We take torches. We see for ourselves what's inside that place. Emily's voice was sharp. You want to walk into the thing that's been knocking on our door? Yes, Mark snapped. Because maybe it's not a thing. Maybe it's kids messing around, or a squatter, or I don't know. Something normal. And if it isn't, his voice faltered. Then at least we'll know. Reuben stared at him, jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed to stay, to shut the door, to wait for morning. But waiting hadn't saved them so far. The mill would not leave them alone. We'll go, Reuben said. Emily shook her head. No, I'm not stepping inside that place. You don't have to, Reuben said softly. But I'm going. For a long time, silence again. Then Emily exhaled, shaking. Fine, but I'm not staying here alone. They left after dark, 3 beams of torchlight cutting through the fog. The valley was still, smothered. The path to the mill felt longer now, as though stretched by the mist itself. The building rose from the fog like a nightmare given stone. Its windows were hollow sockets, its doors sagging under rusted chains. Reuben's chest tightened as they approached. The air smelled worse than before. Not just damp and rot, but something sour, like meat left to spoil. Mark rattled the chain on the main door, muttering, "Too thick. We'll have to go around." They circled the building. The annex loomed half-collapsed, bones still heaped beneath the wall. Reuben's stomach lurched at the sight of them, the torchlight catching pale shards like teeth. Beyond, a smaller door hung askew on one hinge. The wood was soft, rotted through. Mark grinned grimly. "Ladies and gentlemen, our entrance." Emily gripped his sleeve. "Don't," but Mark had already shoved it open. The smell hit them first. Damp, rust, mold, and beneath it all, the same sickly sweet stench that had clung to the air outside. Their torches cut across vast machinery long stilled. Iron wheels and belts, wooden troughs, the skeleton of a forgotten industry. Dust hung thick, disturbed by their breath and footsteps. The floor was slick in places where water seeped through the roof. Rats scuttled out of sight. Mark swept his torch high. "Look at this. It's incredible. The whole place is a museum." Emily's voice trembled. "It doesn't feel empty." She was right. The air pressed close, heavy, as if the walls themselves listened. Each step echoed too loudly, carrying into unseen spaces. Reuben shone his torch across the far wall. Dark stains spread across the stone, rising in uneven streaks. He didn't want to imagine what had left them. They moved deeper. The machinery loomed taller, casting warped shadows. Their beams flickered across ropes hanging like nooses, piles of mildewed sacks, the skeleton of a cart half buried in debris. Then Reuben froze. "Do you hear that?" They stopped. At first, only silence. Then, faint, deep, and steady. Thump, thump. The sound came from inside. Mark's torch shook. "It's the wheel. The wheel's outside," Emily whispered. "Thump. Closer now." Something moved above them. A creak of old timbers, the shift of weight across a floor. All 3 beams jerked upward. The ceiling was lost in shadow. Mark's voice was brittle. "It's just rats. Big ones." But the sound that followed wasn't rats. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Crossing the floor above them. Emily clutched Reuben's arm, nails biting through his coat. Her voice was a breath. "We're not alone." They should have fled then. But something deeper than fear held them. Some terrible gravity that pulled them further in. A staircase sagged at the far wall, narrow and slick with rot. Reuben's stomach turned at the sight of it. Mark stepped forward. "We need to see." "Are you insane?" Emily hissed. "If we leave now, we'll never stop hearing those footsteps. Mark said. His eyes were wide, pupils blown. "We'll never stop wondering." Reuben's hand closed around the torch until his knuckles ached. "I'll go first." The staircase groaned under their weight, each step threatening to collapse. Dust rained from the beams above. At the landing, the smell thickened. The air was warmer here, sticky. Their torches cut across the floor and froze. More bones, piled neatly in the corners as though stored. Some animal, some human. Skulls gaped in silence, eye sockets black and hollow. Emily gagged, clapping her hand to her mouth. Mark swore softly, all bravado drained. Reuben's beam swept across the far wall. A mark had been carved into the stone. A circle. Inside it, a wheel with 8 spokes. The same shape as the mill's water wheel. And smeared across it, something dark, dried, flaking. Blood. The footsteps came again. Not from above this time. From the shadows at the far end of the room. The 3 of them froze, torches trembling. "Hello." Mark's voice cracked. "Who's there?" The footsteps paused, then continued. Slow, heavy, coming closer. Reuben lifted his beam. For a moment, only empty space. Then the light caught movement. Something pale slipping back into shadow. A shape, too tall, too thin, moving wrong. Emily whimpered. "It saw us." Mark grabbed Reuben's sleeve. "We have to go." But the shape moved again, quicker now, crossing the shadows with impossible silence. The footsteps echoed, not matching its pace, coming from everywhere at once. Thump, thump, the sound of the wheel, the sound of a heartbeat. Panic broke them. They fled, stumbling down the stairs, torches swinging wildly. The air thickened, pressing against their chests. Behind them, something moved fast, scraping against the walls. Reuben's boot slipped on the slick floor. Emily yanked him up, breath sobbing in her throat. Mark shoved the door open, and they spilled into the night. The fog was heavier than ever, swallowing their torch beams whole. The mill loomed behind them, black and endless. They ran. Branches tore at them. Mud pulled them down, but they didn't stop until the cottage door slammed shut behind them. Inside, they collapsed by the fireless hearth, gasping, shaking. Mark's face was gray. What the hell was that? No one answered. Emily's hands were trembling uncontrollably. She clutched her knees, rocking. It saw us. It was waiting. Reuben couldn't speak. His mind replayed the moment the light caught it. That pale, stretched figure retreating into shadow. Not human. Not alive. The knock came again. This time not at the door. At the window. 3 sharp taps against the glass. Emily screamed. They didn't sleep that night. They sat huddled in the center of the room. Every candle lit. Torches clutched in white-knuckled fists. The knocks came again and again. Sometimes at the door, sometimes at the windows. Once from the roof. Each time deliberate. Each time waiting for them to answer. By dawn, they were hollow, their sanity fraying. Reuben knew the truth now. The mill was not empty. It had never been empty. Something lived inside it, and now it knew their names. Chapter 5, The Weight of the Valley. By morning, the cottage felt smaller. The fog pressed against the windows, a gray wall, as if the valley itself had folded in on them. Every corner of the room smelled of damp and smoke, and something else, faint metallic clinging. They hadn't slept. Every knock, every scrape, had held them taut as wire until the weak light finally filtered in. But dawn brought no relief. It only showed their exhaustion more clearly. Mark rubbed his temples with raw fingers. We can't stay here. I don't care what this place costs. I don't care about the bloody contract. We pack up and go. Reuben didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on the window, where water streaked down the glass like veins. We tried, he said softly. The road won't let us. Emily sat curled in her blanket, staring at the hearth. Then we're trapped. No one corrected her. The hours stretched like years. Rain hammered the roof. The stream outside roared louder than usual, swollen and angry. Mark paced. His footsteps echoed too loudly in the small room. We need answers. Someone in the village must know. There has to be a village. Places like this don't just disappear. There is no village, Reuben said, still staring at the glass. His reflection was faint, almost lost in the streaks. There's just the mill. Don't say that, Emily whispered. Mark stopped pacing, hands clenched at his sides. You're both losing it. We're tired, we're scared, and this place is getting in our heads. That's all. But his voice cracked, betraying him. By afternoon, the storm had eased. Mist rolled low across the grass. The mill's shadow, just visible through the fog. Reuben couldn't stop staring at it. Each time he blinked, the shape seemed closer, though he knew that was impossible. The wheel wasn't moving, but he swore he could hear the rhythm anyway, like a pulse beneath the ground. Emily noticed his stare. Don't look at it, she said sharply. That's what it wants. He turned to her, startled. What do you mean? Her eyes were wild, pupils huge. It watches. Every time we look, it watches back. Mark snorted, though it sounded hollow. Jesus, listen to us. Talking like lunatics. But he didn't look out the window either. That night, the knocking didn't come. The silence was worse. They sat around the fire, waiting, flinching at every creak. Then Emily spoke. I dreamed of it. The fire spat. Neither boy moved. Her voice was flat, distant. I was inside. Not the mill we saw. Different. New. The machinery shining, the wheel turning. People working. Their faces, she trailed off, shaking. They had no eyes. Mark muttered, just a nightmare. But Reuben leaned forward. I dreamed too. They both stared at him. Water, he whispered. Black, endless. Something moving beneath it. Faces in the glass. The same as yours. The silence stretched until Mark swore under his breath and stood. Enough. You two are feeding off each other. We're not sitting here telling ghost stories until we all go mad. Then what do you suggest? Reuben asked. Mark's jaw tightened. We burn it. The words hung in the air, absurd and dangerous. Burn it, Emily repeated. The mill, Mark said. His eyes gleamed, feverish. If it's cursed, if something's inside, we torch the place. End of story. Reuben's gut clenched. You don't understand. Fire won't stop it. Mark laughed harshly. And how the hell would you know that? Reuben opened his mouth, but no words came. He didn't know. Not for certain. But deep in his bones, he felt it. The mill was older than them, older than the valley. Fire would only wake it further. Emily shook her head. We can't. If someone owns it, we'll end up in prison. And even if we don't, we'd have to get close enough to light it. Mark's fist slammed the table, rattling the mugs. Then what do we do? Sit here and wait for it to pick us off one by one. Reuben's silence was answer enough. They didn't burn the mill, but the idea hung heavy between them, a fracture widening with every hour. By midnight, Mark had withdrawn into himself, pacing the room, muttering under his breath. Emily sat rigid by the fire, her blanket pulled to her chin. Reuben listened to the silence, waiting. When the knock finally came, it was softer than before. Not the door, not the windows. From beneath them, the floor. A slow, deliberate tap against the flagstones, as if something waited just below. Emily whimpered. Mark's muttering broke into frantic swearing. Reuben pressed his hands to his ears, but the sound vibrated through his bones. Talp! Pause! Talp! Always in threes. They lasted until dawn, but none of them spoke. When the sun rose gray and weak, they stumbled into the cold air outside. The fog was lighter now, just enough to show the valley stretched further than they'd realized. Hills rolled on, but no road, no houses, no trace of life. Only the mill, crouched black and massive by the stream. Mark spat into the mud. It's laughing at us. Emily shuddered. Don't say that. But Reuben thought he was right. By afternoon, Mark was gone. One moment he was pacing, muttering about fire. The next, the door creaked and he was striding into the fog, torch clutched in his hand. Mark! Emily cried, rushing after him. But by the time they reached the path, he had vanished into the mist. They searched until their throats burned, shouting his name, stumbling through brambles and muck. No answer, only the rush of the stream, louder than ever. At last, Reuben grabbed Emily's arm. "We have to go back." Her eyes were wide, wet with panic. "We can't just leave him. If we stay out here, it'll take us too," he said harshly. Her breath hitched, but she let him pull her back. The cottage felt emptier with Mark gone. Too quiet. The fire wouldn't catch. Emily sat curled in the corner, eyes swollen from crying. "He's dead," she whispered. "No," Reuben said, though he didn't believe it. "He'll come back." The knock came then, at the window, but this time it wasn't 3. It was 1, and when Reuben forced himself to look, the beam of his torch catching the glass. Mark's face stared back at him, eyes hollow, skin pale as wax, mouth moving soundlessly against the glass. Emily screamed, but when Reuben blinked, the window was empty. That night, he didn't sleep. The footsteps came again, pacing the roof, circling the walls. The tapping beneath the floor grew louder, urgent, as if something clawed to get in. And through it all, faintly, they heard Mark's voice, calling their names, begging. By dawn, Emily was broken. She shook, muttering, rocking herself by the hearth. Reuben tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away. "He's out there," she whispered. "We can't leave him out there." Reuben's chest ached. He wanted to believe Mark was alive, but he had seen the face at the window. Not alive. Not anymore. "We stay inside," he said, his voice hollow. "We don't answer, no matter what we hear." But even as he spoke, he wasn't sure he could keep his word, because the valley was shrinking. The fog pressed tighter, and the mill was waiting. Chapter 6, The Turning Wheel. The cottage felt more like a tomb than a refuge. By the time another gray dawn seeped into the valley, Reuben could no longer tell if the knocking, the footsteps, or Mark's voice had stopped, or if his own mind had simply dulled to them. Emily hadn't spoken since the scream at the window. She sat in the chair nearest the hearth, rocking slowly, her blanket wrapped so tightly it seemed part of her skin. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, unblinking, lips moving soundlessly. Reuben tried speaking to her once. She didn't reply. The day dragged on. The fog never lifted. The mill crouched in the mist like a great beast, waiting. Reuben forced himself outside for firewood. Each step through the sodden grass made him feel exposed, as if countless eyes watched from the valley. He stacked the wood clumsily, his hands shaking, half expecting to see Mark standing at the tree lean again. But